few weeks ago, I was on my usual night shift at St. Mark's Hospital. I've been a nurse there for almost 2 years. I took the job to pay off my student loans and save for a family one day. Most nights are quiet, just the way I like it. But this night was different. The hospital was built in the 1950s. Long, dimly lit corridors stretched out like arms, the white walls cold and sterile. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, flickering on and off. Around 10 p.m. I expected the usual calm. I was tired, but patients rely on me, and I took pride in my work. Around midnight I checked on a child in the pediatric ward. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the monitors. I sighed and walked out. That's when I heard it. Faint footsteps echoing down the hall. I thought it was a fellow nurse, so I spun around, but the hallway was empty. Maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me. The next night it happened again. I was still on the 3rd floor checking on some patients when I heard those footsteps again, louder this time. I felt uneasy but brushed it off. I told myself I was tired from work. By the end of the week, those footsteps were still there. Now they came with whispers, soft and muffled, like someone was trying to talk from far away. I glanced around but saw no one. My heart raced. Was I going crazy? That night, I walked toward the pediatric ward again. The whispers grew louder and the lights flickered more often. I felt cold even though the hospital was warm. When I got to the door, I pulled it to check on my patients, but it wouldn't budge. I was confused. The ward was never locked. I took a step back, unease wrapping around me. The whispers were pleading now, begging for help. I could feel my pulse quicken. I pushed against the door, gripping the cold handle tightly, but it wouldn't move. Panic set in. Should I call for help? But the whispers felt personal. In a moment of hesitation, I leaned closer to the door. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Just those whispers swirling around me. I felt an overwhelming urge to run. Maybe it was just my imagination. My heart raced, pounding in my chest. Then I heard a voice clearer than the rest, quiet but unmistakable. "Help us!" I whipped around, searching the hallway for anyone. It was empty. Suddenly a shadow moved at the edge of my sight. I turned, but it vanished. My breath quickened. I stepped back from the door, gripping the handle tighter. I didn't know what was real anymore. Then, all at once, the whispers stopped. There was a loud bang. The lights went out for a moment, and when they came back on, the door swung open. I didn't wait to see what was inside. I turned and ran, unsure of what had just happened or what might be following me. I dashed towards the nurse's station, my heart pounding in my chest. Each step felt heavy, like the ground was trying to suck me back. My mind raced with chaotic thoughts. What had just happened? I could still hear those whispers, haunting me. I didn't want to look back, but the fear was almost suffocating. As I reached the station, I noticed Sarah, another nurse, sitting at the desk, staring intently at her computer screen. Her face was pale and tense. "Hey," I said, trying to catch my breath. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" she asked, her voice flat, not taking her eyes off the screen. "The whispers and the footsteps." I hesitated. "I think something's wrong in the pediatric ward." Sarah paused, finally looking at me. "Whispers? You mean those stories? Everyone hears them. I thought you didn't believe in that stuff." "What stories?" I asked, feeling a chill creep down my spine. "About the kids, patients who never left," she said, her expression shifting from concern to fear. "They say sometimes you can hear them calling for help. They were here, but they didn't survive. It's just a rumor, though." I felt a knot of dread settle in my stomach. "It's not a rumor. I heard them." Just then the overhead lights flickered again, and the temperature dropped. I shivered involuntarily. Sarah's face paled further, her eyes wide. That shouldn't be happening. It's not even storming." Suddenly a loud crash echoed from the pediatric ward. We both jumped. Sarah grabbed the phone as I moved to look down the corridor, my instincts taking over despite my fear. "We need to check it out," Sarah said, a tremor in her voice. I hesitated, dread pooling in my gut. "I don't think that's a good idea." But Sarah was already moving, and I felt the pull of duty. I couldn't let her do this alone. We made our way down the dark hallway, the lights still buzzing and flickering. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking behind us. As we approached the ward, the air grew thick with apprehension. I could hear my heart pounding louder than ever. The whispers were back, swirling around us, beckoning us. They were desperate, and I felt an unshakable urge to listen. We reached the door. It stood ajar now, a small crack revealing darkness within. Sarah pushed it gently, the door creaking open slowly. "Hello?" she called, her voice wavering. There was no response, just that suffocating silence. I leaned in to peer inside, and that's when I saw it. A small shape huddled in the far corner of the room. My breath caught in my throat. A child? I couldn't tell. There was a soft, shivering movement, and the whispers seemed to concentrate around that figure. "Is someone there?" Sarah called again, stepping hesitantly into the room. I stayed back, frozen in fear. The shape slowly turned, and I felt my heart drop. It wasn't a child. The face was pale, gaunt, as if it had been drained of life. "Help us," it whispered, a voice grave and echoing. Before I could react, the lights flickered one last time and went out completely. The darkness swallowed us. I felt an icy grip on my wrist, pulling me back. I was not alone. Something was in that room with me, and in the silence, I realized I'd only just begun to uncover what lay hidden in those walls. I was thrust into complete darkness, my heart racing. Panic surged through me as I pulled my wrist free from whatever had gripped me. I stumbled back, my back hitting the wall. The whispers intensified, swirling around us like a thick fog, suffocating and ominous. "Sarah?" I croaked, my voice trembling. I could barely see a thing, but I strained to listen for her. The only answer was a distant echo of my own breath. I felt my way along the wall, my palms sweeping desperately for reassurance. Then I heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps echoing in the darkness. They were coming toward us. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "Sarah!" I called again, louder this time. "Where are you?" "Over here!" she shouted, her voice sounding strained and distant. I felt a surge of relief and fear mixed together and hurried toward the sound. Just as I reached her, the whispers fell silent. "What happened?" she asked, her breath hitching. "I can't see anything." "Something touched me," I managed to say, chills breaking out along my arms. "No," she whispered, fear creeping into her tone. "We need to get out of here." As if in response to her words, the footsteps came again, this time closer, more insistent. I felt a pull, a strange desire to move toward those sounds. "Wait," I said instinctively. "Do you hear that?" Sarah grabbed my arm, digging her fingers into my skin. "We can't stay here." She pulled me with her, urging me back toward the door. The footsteps echoed once more, drawing nearer, as if something wanted to reveal itself. We stumbled through the pitch-black room, our eyes adjusting to the absence of light as best they could. Then I saw it. A faint glow at the other end of the room, illuminating a corner we hadn't noticed before. A small child, no older than 5, sat on the floor, clutching something in her hands. "Help me," she whispered, her voice soft yet haunting, just like the other whispers. I felt a wave of pity wash over me, followed by a wave of dread. "Where are you?" Sarah called back to me, her voice cutting through the tension. "Where did you go?" I stepped closer, drawn by the child's vulnerability, but something didn't feel right. The air thickened, a palpable tension rising as I reached out. "It's a girl," I said, my voice hardly above a whisper. "Get away from her," Sarah shouted. "Come back." The child looked up at me, her eyes wide and hollow. "They won't let me go," she said, her voice echoing in my head. I could see the shadows behind her, shifting and darkening, like a scene pulled from a nightmare. "Please," she begged, "I don't want to stay here." Before I could respond, a deep rumbling sound filled the air, shaking me to my core. With all my strength, I turned to run toward Sarah. But as I took a step back, the whispers surged again, filling my mind and clawing at my sanity. "Help us," the child cried, her voice joining the chorus of others. "You can't leave us behind." I felt a wave of despair wash over me as the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the room fully. But in that moment, the once empty corner of the room was now empty again. The child had vanished. "What just happened?" Sarah gasped, gripping my arm tightly. The footsteps faded away, replaced by an eerie silence. I looked around frantically, heart racing. "I don't know," I admitted. I realized then we were far from safe. Something was very wrong in this hospital, and I was beginning to understand that whatever haunted this place wouldn't let us leave without consequences. As I turned to leave the room, I felt something brush my cheek, cold and weightless, a reminder that the whispers were far from over. "We have to go," I urged, terror rising within me. But as we neared the door, I froze. I wasn't alone. A reflection caught my eye in the far corner. Something was watching us. "Run!" I shouted, the urgency in my voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. But the door was suddenly heavy, as if an unseen force was holding it shut. Panic surged anew. We were trapped. As I struggled against the door, dread clawed at my insides. Something was definitely holding it. "Sarah, help me!" I strained my voice, pushing against the unyielding barrier. She was behind me, her breath frantic. "What's happening? Why won't it open?" I forced myself to focus. "It's like something is pushing back. We need to find another way out." I could feel hot breath on my neck like a warning, and it sent a shiver down my spine. I let go of the door, the sound of our pounding hearts filling the silence. I turned, scanning the room for any weak spots. All I could think was that unfinished business lingered, and the air felt more suffocating. Shadows flickered along the walls, casting a distorted view of our surroundings. "Over here," I pointed to a window at the far side of the room. "Maybe we can climb through." We rushed toward it, the desperate hope of escape fueling our haste. As we approached the window, I glanced back. The door was still shut tight, the dark force pressing against it like an immovable wall. "Can you push it open?" I asked Sarah, my hands trembling as I tried to lift the window latch. It wouldn't budge. "No," she replied, panic creeping into her voice. "It's locked." "Then we need to find something to break it," I said, glancing around. Just then, a sharp noise pierced the silence, like a low growl echoing from the hallway beyond. I froze, dread suffocating me once more. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," she whispered, inching closer to me. "What was it?" Before I could answer, the whispers returned, rising up from all corners of the room, thick and oppressive. "Help us. You can't leave." They wove together like a sinister lullaby, growing louder as I felt a prickling sensation on my skin. I couldn't breathe. I swung back to the window and saw a glimmer of light sneak through the cracks. "Get ready," I said, searching the room again. "Look for something. Anything." Sarah's eyes darted around until she grabbed a small metal chair. "This should work." She swung it toward the window, but the sound of metal against glass echoed harshly, morphing into a whimper. "Do it again," I urged. She swung again, harder this time, and I flinched with every crack of the glass. The noise drew more shadows out from the corners, creeping toward us. "Please," a voice implored, chilling me to my bones. "You shouldn't stay here." "The child from before?" I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. "Focus, Sarah, break it!" With one final determined strike, the glass finally shattered, sending shards flying. She climbed through first, and instinct kicked in. I followed right behind her, grasping for pieces of the ledge to steady myself as I squeezed through. Suddenly, I heard it, those footsteps again. Fast and heavy, they echoed right behind us, gaining on us as we hit the ground outside. "We need to run," I shouted. Sarah landed beside me, her expression wide with terror. But just as we bolted, something cold brushed my ankle. I stumbled, looking back to see a dark figure rising from the shadows at the broken window. "Go!" I yelled, fear spiking my adrenaline. We sprinted towards the edge of the hospital grounds, but as we reached the gate, it slammed shut in front of us. "Oh my God!" Sarah cried, her hands shaking as she pulled at the metal bars. Then I heard it again. The footsteps were closer. Whatever it was not going to let us leave. My heart raced as I scanned the darkened path ahead, struggling to come up with a plan. But as the whispers grew louder, drowning out everything else, I realized we weren't just fighting for our escape. We were being hunted, and we had nowhere to run. We backed away from the gate, the panic swirling around us like a dense fog. The footsteps were unmistakable now, heavy and deliberate, punctuated by the breath that felt too hot in the chilly night air. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but where could we go? "Sarah," I hissed, my mind racing. "The side of the building, there must be another exit." She nodded, her eyes wide and glimmering with tears. We dashed toward the dimly lit side of the hospital, dodging shadows and debris. As we rounded the corner, I glanced over my shoulder. No one was behind us yet, but the whispers followed, a chorus of despair that twisted in my mind. "Over there," I pointed to a fire escape. It hung low and beckoning, a rusted metal ladder leading to safety. I climbed first, taking 2 rungs at a time. Sarah followed closely, but after a few steps, a sharp clang echoed beneath us. My heart sank. "What was that?" she gasped, peering down. "If it's after us, we can't stop now," I urged. "Just keep going." We clambered up, the metal rattling ominously beneath our weight. Finally, we reached the top, panting as we crouched close to the roof's edge. I tried to catch my breath, but the whispers became clearer, forming words that throbbed in my ears. "You can't leave. You must help us. Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. Instead, I scanned the rooftop for a way down. We could cross over to the next building, but the distance seemed vast and risky. I felt a sudden chill sweep over me, as if the shadows had taken a breath of their own. "Let's keep moving," I finally said, glimpsing a narrow ledge at the opposite end. "We can jump to that side." As we made our way, the oppressive air thickened. Just as I reached the ledge, something rustled behind me. I turned, my stomach dropping as I saw a shadow move dark and formless, stretching toward us. "Sarah!" I shouted, panic rising as I realized it was blocking our path back. "Go!" she yelled, her voice echoing in the night. She leaped over, landing awkwardly but managing to stay upright. I followed, but as my foot hit the ledge, there was a loud crack. I slipped, my heart racing as I tried to regain my balance. "Help!" I shouted, desperate, but a cold grip seized my ankle, pulling me back. I fought against it, kicking wildly, and finally broke free. I stumbled forward, finally landing beside Sarah as the grip released, but I could hear the footsteps, clanging, angry, as if summoned by my cry. We could see movement creeping toward us from the rooftop access. "They know we're here," I breathed, my heart racing. "We have to hide." Just then I noticed a vent cover slightly ajar. "In there," I pointed, and without thinking we crawled in just before the darkness swept the rooftop. Inside, the metal walls pressed close around us, muffling the outside sounds but heightening the whispers. "You shouldn't have come here." I squeezed Sarah's hand, the fear coursing through me like wildfire. This wasn't over. Someone else knew we were here, and we were about to find out more than we ever wanted to know. And then the murmurs faded, replaced by heavy silence. "Did they leave?" she whispered. But I had no answer. I felt something shift in the dark. "I don't know, but we can't stay here," I replied. That's when I heard it, a slow, methodical breathing in the tight space beside us. My heart dropped. I turned slowly, my breath shallow. Something was still inside with us. I held my breath, straining to hear over Sarah's soft whimpers. The breathing was close, too close, harsh and rhythmic, as if it belonged to something just beyond the reach of my sight. I had to focus my mind. We weren't dead yet. I could still hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears. "Stay still," I whispered, tightening my grip on Sarah's hand. I felt her tremble. Whatever it is, it might not know we're here. The breathing continued, each inhalation a heavy sigh that sent chills crawling down my spine. I dared to inch closer to the source of the sound. My fingers brushed against something. Cold metal. A pipe? I blinked, trying to see, but the darkness swallowed everything. Then it happened, a low, guttural whisper echoed in the vent. "Help us." My stomach twisted at the sound. It was like a plea from the depths of hell. A rush of adrenaline pushed me to the edge of panic. "What do we do?" I lied, trying to keep my voice steady for Sarah's sake. "Can't we just wait it out?" she pleaded, her voice quaking. I wanted to agree, but the weight of the whispers pressed in around us. "We can't. There has to be another way out. We have to keep moving." Just as I got my bearings, the breathing shifted. It seemed to be right above us now, the huffs quickening. Panic suffocated my rational thoughts. I crawled backward instinctively, bumping against the vent cover. It shifted slightly but didn't open. "No," I breathed. "We're trapped." "Do you think it knows we're here?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with terror. Before I could respond, a sudden sound jolted through the vent. Metal scraping against metal. I nearly jumped out of my skin, heart racing. "We need to go now," I snapped. I forced myself to twist around and scuttle toward the narrowed vent when I felt a sudden shift of air as if something had blocked our only exit. The darkness felt thicker all of a sudden, heavier, and I had to swallow hard against the rising bile in my throat. "Move," I urged, shoving Sarah's shoulder. "We'll climb back up." But she hesitated. "What if it's waiting for us up there?" "We don't have a choice," I hissed, feeling the walls closing in on us. "If we don't go now." Then came the sound. The scraping grew louder as a heavy presence pressed against the metal. My heart thundered. I could sense it drawing closer. "Now!" I screamed as I shoved her forcefully, our bodies tumbling backward as I scrambled to make a break for it. We burst out of the vent and landed hard on the rooftop, the cool night air hitting us like a slap. I gasped for breath, looking around wildly for any sign of that chilling presence. But just as I caught my breath, I saw it. The door to the building we had just come from creaked slowly open. Shadows spilled out and I felt my skin crawl. "Sarah!" I shouted, urgency spilling from my voice. "Get to the ladder!" We started to run for our lives, the whispers rising behind us, relentless, full of rage. There was no turning back now. That dark presence was with us, and somehow, I could feel it hunting us down. But as we reached the edge of the rooftop, there was a new sound. A faint crackling filled the air. "Watch out!" I yelled, turning as blinding light poured through the doorway. Everything went blank. When I came to, I was lying on the cold rooftop, blinking against the harsh brightness. My head throbbed. The overwhelming panic of the last moments began to fade as I adjusted to the sudden silence. "Sarah!" I called, struggling to sit up. Dread clawed at my chest when I didn't hear her response. I looked around, but there was no sign of her. The rooftop was empty, desolate. Shadows formed strange shapes in the corners of my vision, but I couldn't afford to lose my mind now. Not when we were so close to escape. "Sarah!" I yelled louder, hoping she'd hear me. There was no answer. I got to my feet, swaying slightly. The blinding light had vanished, leaving the rooftop in a muted twilight. I could see the ladder still standing, but it felt impossibly far away. I took a few cautious steps, squinting to pick out anything that could signal Sarah's presence. Something stirred in the air, a delicate rustle. My heart raced again. "Sarah?" I took another step forward, straining my ears. The whispering sound from before slithered back, just a faint echo, distant yet familiar. It seemed to pull me, coaxing me to follow. I froze, weighing my options. Curiosity battled against the instinct to flee. I grabbed the edge of the roof and peered over, searching the alley below. Nothing. Just empty streetlights flickering eerily, their glow offering little comfort. Then came a noise that made my skin crawl. 3 heavy footsteps thudding behind me, deliberately slow. They echoed and reverberated in the stillness, punctuating the night like a warning bell. I spun around, terror spiraling through me. The darkness lay thick and I could only make out vague outlines. But the footsteps grew louder, advancing purposefully. I could feel a cold sweat forming on my brow. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaky but trying to sound stronger than I felt. There was no response, just the relentless footsteps, a steady rhythm that inched closer. Suddenly, I recalled the whispers again, the same haunting phrase repeated over and over in my mind. "Help us." A flash of brilliance ignited behind my eyes, and before I could think twice, I bolted towards the ladder. My heart pounded against my chest as I leaped for it, not daring to look back. There was no time for hesitation. Not when whatever hunted us was so close. Just as I gripped the bottom rung, the footsteps halted abruptly. I remembered Sarah's face, her trusting eyes when I promised we'd find a way out. A surge of determination propelled me upward, a desperate need to find her. But as I finally reached the edge of the roof, a familiar voice called out from behind me, sounding woeful and urgent. "Please." I hesitated. It was her voice. It could only be her. But what awaited me in the darkness? In that heartbeat I had to decide. Risk everything to find her or escape to safety alone. The whispers intensified, and they weren't just calling for help anymore. They were demanding it. And then I heard it. Soft footsteps behind me. "Help us." The darkness beckoned, and I wasn't sure who to trust. I lingered for just a moment, heart caught in my throat. The voice tugged at me, wiry and desperate. My instincts screamed for me to jump down and take my chances, but the looming shadow behind me held me captive. My fingers tightened around the ladder, and I could almost feel Sarah's presence in the darkness, coaxing me. "Sarah," I called again, each syllable echoing in the void. Nothing. Just that same chilling silence followed by the deafening thud of my pulse. The soft footsteps faded, replaced by an unfamiliar rustling. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The darkness remained thick, and dread bubbled inside me. Whatever was out there lurked, biding its time. I turned back to the ladder, heart hammering as I took a few steps down, still holding on to that sliver of hope that Sarah was just below, waiting for me. Just then, a chill wind swept across the rooftop, wrapping around me like an unwanted embrace. It felt like a warning, and I shivered. I needed to make a choice. Then I heard it. A scraping sound behind me, not far at all, a raw, dragging noise against the concrete that sent panic racing through my veins. I had to move. Suddenly, I leapt from the ladder and landed on the roof. My feet barely touched the surface before I took off toward the rooftop door. The whispers surged again, but deeper, layered with urgency and fear. "Help! Help us!" I couldn't stop now. I reached the door and flung it open, but my heart sank. It led to a dark stairwell, the air inside thick and oppressive. The faint stench of mildew and something else, a metallic tang, hit my nose flat. As I stepped inside, I instinctively glanced back. A figure lurked in the dimness, presenting a mere silhouette. It looked like an adult, but felt wrong in a primal way. "Sarah?" I barely whispered, hoping against hope. "If that's you, come here." But instead of recognizing her voice, I watched as the figure tilted its head, an eerie mimicry of curiosity. I couldn't stay. Rampant urgency clawed at my insides. I turned back around and stumbled down the staircase, each step feeling as if I was descending into some place worse than before. The whispers morphed into unintelligible chants, spiraling in chaos, and I nearly faltered as a new sound joined them, a moan resonating, like lamenting souls trapped in the same torment. I sprinted down, panic-stricken, desperate to escape it all. Just as I reached the landing, the flickering lights overhead buzzed around me, casting wild shadows. In that split second, I spotted something on the floor, an object partially hidden in the darkness. A small silver locket, one I recognized from Sarah. It lay there, gleaming like a beacon in a sea of despair. I picked it up, barely aware of the echoes of fractured voices and the looming threat behind me. With the locket clutched tightly in my hand, a surge of conviction filled me. I would find her. But then the shadow shifted once more, solidifying into a shape. I had to act. The very air crackled with tension, thick and oppressive. I peered down the next flight of stairs, uncertain of what lay ahead, knowing I had already lost precious time. In the distance, the whispers shouted now, a cacophony of calls weaving together in a frantic plea. I took a deep breath, exhilaration and fear coursing through me, and chose to plunge deeper into the unknown. The air was different as I descended into the next level. It felt colder, like stepping into a forgotten tomb. The whispers transformed into sharp staccato breaths which snaked through the dim light. I gripped the stair railing tighter, expecting a hand to reach out from the shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. The locket dangled heavily from my grip, a tangible reminder of Sarah. I had to keep moving. Each step reverberated against the concrete, drowned out occasionally by the rustling that followed close behind. I dared not look back, but the instinct was there, pulling me like gravity. On the next landing, I found a huge door, heavy wood with iron fittings slightly ajar. A faint glow seeped from the crack, illuminating the corridor beyond with a sickly yellow light. I pushed the door open, the creaking sound contrasting the hum of whispers that seemed to lean into the room. Inside, the air swirled with a strange energy, thick with anticipation. I paused for a moment, peering into a room that looked like an old break room. Tables and chairs were overturned, remnants of what might once have been a gathering place. But there was no time to ponder why it was left in disarray. Something else caught my eye. Across the room stood a figure draped in shadows, still and silent. My heart pounded. "Sarah?" I called again, a plea wrapped in desperation. There was no response, just the figure shifting slightly as if acknowledging my presence. Then, in a flash, it took a step forward. Not toward me, but to the side, revealing what stood beside it. A mirror. I stepped closer and caught a glimpse of the reflection. 3 shadowed figures stood behind me, their faces etched with sorrow. They weren't just there to haunt me. They were reaching out. I spun around, ready to confront whatever nightmare awaited. But the room was empty, save for the echo of my own heavy breathing. Fighting wave after wave of dread, I turned back to the mirror. The figures were still there, and now they were closer. I could see their mouths moving, forming words I couldn't hear. It felt like they were begging for something, but I couldn't understand what. The locket was warm in my hand, almost pulsing now. As their anguished faces swirled in whispers, a thought knotted in my mind. Was this what Sarah was trying to tell me? Was she trapped with them? That's when I noticed something at the bottom of the mirror, an inscription almost covered in dust. It read, "They call for the lost. They reside in the unseen." Before I could comprehend the meaning, I felt a presence at my back. A sudden cold draft surged through the room. I turned, and there standing at the door was the figure again, but this time it was clearer. An unmistakable outline, the silhouette of a woman. My heart raced. It was her, or at least I hoped it was. "Help us," she whispered, a mere breath that brushed against my cheek. Then everything went dark. I sat up, heart racing, the last remnants of that darkness still clinging to me. As the world slowly came into focus, I found myself back in the break room, though this time it felt completely altered. The once ominous shadows retreated, and soft light seeped through the cracked windows. I was alone, but the air felt different, less oppressive, almost peaceful. "Sarah?" I called, my voice echoing slightly in the stillness. I stood up slowly, bracing myself against the table, scanning the room for any sign of my friend. The locket still lay heavy in my palm, its warmth comforting amidst the uncertainty. Warily I stepped back toward the mirror. The once mysterious portal to shadows now seemed to glimmer faintly. No desperate figures twisted in anguish. Instead, the surface reflected a quiet scene. I peered closer, searching for a glimpse of Sarah. Nothing. Just my reflection staring back, weary and pained. A flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned abruptly, and there, in the doorway, was Sarah. Her face was pale but clear, a stark contrast to the last time I saw her, lost in the shadows. "I thought I lost you," I breathed, emotions flooding my chest. "I'm right here," she said softly, her voice steady as she stepped into the room. Relief washed over me, and I rushed to her. "I thought something terrible happened." "I know," she replied quietly. It's hard to explain." Before I could reply, I was suddenly gripped by a wave of memories. The shadows, the whispers, the desperate cries for help all surged through my mind. What about the children?" I stammered. "The spirits in this hospital?" She nodded, her brow furrowing. "Something isn't resolved here. They're connected to us, to the memories we've dug up. But what do we do?" I asked desperately. "How do we help them? I think—" She hesitated, glancing toward the mirror. "We need to free them. Whatever binds them here is tied to us as well. They need to be acknowledged, not just feared. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of our task. So we confront it? What do we say? I don't know, she said, but we can't just run anymore. We have to face whatever it is. With a steely resolve, we approached the mirror together. The surface shimmered with anticipation, as if waiting for our intentions. I could feel the whispers percolating beneath the surface, swirling around my thoughts, desperate for attention, for closure, like souls trapped in a limbo where no one could hear them. Let them go, I said firmly, squeezing Sarah's hand tightly. This is not your place. You are not alone. I stepped closer, my heart racing. Help us, echoed through the air, not in a sorrowful plea but a chorus of voices finding strength. It vibrated through me, deepening my resolve. You are seen. You are heard, I continued. You deserve peace. The mirror's reflection rippled violently, shadows swirling as if caught in a whirlpool. The cold air turned warm, a luminous glow expanding outside the boundaries of the glass. I can feel them, Sarah whispered, awe in her voice, her expression shifting from fear to something like hope. With a final surge of energy, I raised the locket above my head, its sheen illuminating the darkness. You are free, I cried. Find your peace. The whispers morphed into laughter, joyous and liberating. One by one, shadows slipped away from the mirror's grip, ascending into the light. And then, just like that, silence returned. A profound, calming silence. I lowered the locket, panting as we stepped back, realizing what we had just done. Did it work? Sarah asked, glancing at the mirror. A shimmering reflection gazed back at us. No echoes of the past, only our relieved faces staring back like a promise of hope. But as I turned to face the room again, a thought nagged at me, a flickering unease. Deep down, I knew the hospital had not unwound itself entirely. There were still layers left unknown, whispers lurking just beyond our awareness. Sometimes I wonder, I began, looking at Sarah, did we resolve everything, or is this just the beginning? She shrugged, a wary smile touching her lips. I guess we really don't have the answers yet. Together we left the break room, stepping into the hallway that felt infinitely lighter than before. But as I took a deep breath, a familiar chill grazed my skin, a reminder that not all shadows had vanished. I had survived the night, but a part of me understood what dwelled beneath the surface remained ambiguous, unseen. I wonder what's still waiting in the dark, I said softly. What else we need to face. But for now, we stepped out into the light, leaving the hospital behind. I still think about it sometimes, wondering if those whispers still echo in an unseen realm. Ultimately, though, I had to focus on the living, the ones who still walk this earth. And so we walked on, two souls tethered by the mysteries we shared, each step taking us further into the unknown while the whispers faded into the night.